Welcome back to video 2 on the intro to the key of A. This is the second video. In the first video, really quick, we talked about making a folder for each key and starting to not see chords as random chords, but starting to organize our mind around seeing that, oh, this song is in the key of whatever that is. So let's continue in the key of A, figuring out what other chords go with it. And I want to introduce a concept called the circle of chords. And the idea is that every key has what we call a circle of chords that represents the whole of that key. Octave. You've heard the term octave. Real quick, octave is an octave. Oct means 8. And that's when we have the same note, what we call an octave away from itself. It's the same note in a higher or say lower pitch. But it's the same note. And so when I sing this scale, how many notes did we pass over? We passed over 7 notes, and the 8th one being that first one again. Da, da, octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you. That was cool. So for each note in that major scale, da 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 da, there is a chord assigned to that note. So we put it in a circle because by the time you get back all the way around, you're back home again. You're back at the 1 chord. So checking out that key of A, we see all 7 chords. We see on the 3rd one, we get this weird something over something, and same thing with the 7th chord. Those are goofy chords. We're going to go over all of them and what they mean, how to make them in their traditional sense. Again, in the 3rd video, I mentioned this in the 1st video, that I'm going to do some alternate ways to play these chords. Just like cool sounding ways to play them, maybe easier ways to play them. So let's jump right into the circle of chords for the key of A. We have A. The 2nd chord is always a minor. A's minor to minor is a B minor. A, B, what's the chord that represents that moment there? It's a B minor. So eventually you want to get to where you not only can play all these chords, but you know them up in the old brain, and they're filed away in your brain folder for the key of A. So B minor, it's just a traditional B minor for right now. If you know any other cool minors, excellent. You think they sound good for the song, go for it. And we're going to go into an easier way to play these chords in the 3rd video. All right, so now we get to the 3rd position. A over C sharp. Sometimes the 3rd chord is a minor, depending on the song. But usually it's a, what we call a 1 over 3, or in this case, an A over C sharp. A, B, C. What's the chord that represents that moment? It's an A over C sharp. What in the world is a something over something? Well, here's the trick. The first letter is the chord. So anything over anything, the first one is the chord. So if you didn't know what this something over something is, if you knew what the first one is, say A, you can always just play A, and it does the trick. It passes the moment. But you miss out on a cool kind of creative thing happening here, and that is that the bass, we get to the 2nd letter. The 2nd letter represents the bass of that chord. So the lowest note you want to play in an A over C sharp is the C sharp note. You want to get it from those low, somewhere along those low 2 strings, and everything else flowing from that chord should be an A chord. It's not a C sharp chord. It's really an A chord with C sharp in the bass. Again, if you're strummy dude on the guitar and you're playing with a bass player, maybe a keyboard player, you can depend on them to hit those strange chords or those strange bass notes. If you don't know how to play it, you can always just play the A. But here's the traditional way to play it. Another thing we call these chords is inverted chords. So it's like it's a chord, but it's kind of twisted a little bit. Here's one way to play it. So we've got an A and we've got a C sharp note right here. So like where you play your C chord, right? That's a C note. That's a C sharp note. Everything else about it, if you can reach it that way, everything else about it is an A chord. We've got them all held down just like a normal A chord. Another way to look at it is if you could do that. The A over C sharp chord is not an easy chord to play. It's not a very common chord to play. So if you can get the A over C sharp chord down, you're doing pretty good. A lot of guitar players, rhythm acoustic guitar players, they'll find a different way around it. One way to play it is to bar, to clamp 1, 2, 3 where your A chord is and reach out with your third finger or even your pinky. So let's listen to those chords in context. A minor, A over C sharp, down to D, there's that fourth chord, then to E, what's next? F sharp minor. F sharp minor. Now we get to our 7 chord, E over G sharp. So it's a 5 over 7, the 5th note over the 7th note, which is G sharp. Where's a G sharp note? What in the world is a G sharp note? Sharp means to go up one from that natural. We know this is a G from our G chords. So this is a G sharp note. It's one higher than G. So it's an E with a G sharp note in it. Another one of those chords that's like, how often are you going to play that? Probably not too often. Again, this would be kind of a very traditional way of playing it. Playing an actual E and maybe reaching out your pinky to that 4th fret. Not an easy chord at all. But here's still a traditional way to play it, but it's a little bit easier. We've got those 2 notes right there. Naturally in an E chord, these 2 right here on the 2nd string, second fret. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a nice bend in this joint here and do an indented finger here to hold down, to bar down on both of those 2 strings. Again, I'm going to arch back out because I want these high strings to ring through. I don't want it to be touching these high strings. I'm only pushing in on the 2nd and 3rd string, 2nd fret. This leaves me free here. I'm going to do a real stretch here. I'm going to go to that 4th fret. Now we've got our G sharp note. Our problem is we have an open G here, and we don't want that to play. Otherwise, we get basically an E minor chord over G sharp, and that's going to not sound good. So I'm going to put my pinky on that open G. And what we do is now we get 2 B notes. That's a B note, and this is a B string. So we just get a repeat of that B note. It's kind of a way of cheating past getting that G sharp note, and then instead it's a B note. So, what? Boom. So let's just hear it in context. I'm gonna walk down the scale this time. I'm gonna start on A, E over G sharp, F sharp minor, going down to D, A over C sharp, D minor, back home, right? We went on a big trip and we made it back home. You hear it resolve and land and be back comfortable, rested on its ground, on its foundational chord. You hear how all those chords revolve around each other and they're friends with each other. So this is a nice way to introduce us to the third video, in that all these chords, they do the trick. They get by. Again, we call them kind of block chords or traditional chords, what I call type 1 chords. They do the trick, they sound fine, but there's nothing real interesting about them. They're not what I call colorful or flavorful. right? They do the trick. Plain major and minor chords, think of them like baked chicken. Does baked chicken do the trick? Does it fill you up? Yeah. But is it interesting? Is it flavorful? These other colorful chords give these major and minor chords flavor. And you might say, make the picture colorful. They add dynamic or they add dimension. And we're going to get into a couple of those common alternate chords, colorful chords in video 3. So what I would recommend to you is I would literally do what I just did there. I would make sure I can play through all of those chords in a rhythm. Put rhythm behind it. If you're struggling with making it sound like it's just not going anywhere, that's because the rhythm, you're not understanding a deep sense of rhythm. You have to have a deep sense of rhythm, and that has to come out. So you can go up. In fact, I'm going to do it now. If you want to do it with me, you can. If you need to spend 5 weeks, a year working on getting these chords down, that's okay too. I can't give you experience. You have to earn it, right? So I'm going to start on A, and I'm going to go up in the key. Up the key. I'm going to go a measure at a time. So it'd be like 1 to B minor. Ready? Starting on A. 1, 2, 3, 4. We got A, B minor. Now you've already got a bar here. Just move that down a little bit and move that third finger up. Going to D. So again, you could practice things like that. Always ask yourself, what's the simplest way to get from here to there? Again, that B minor to A, really, if you think about it, if you keep that proper, it's not a big change. You shouldn't go like that, right, to get from B minor to A. You want to train those fingers to be as efficient as possible. So going up the key again, 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B minor, A or C sharp, going to D, going to E, F sharp minor, E or G sharp, So that's a nice introduction. Video 2, for the key of A, we introduced the concept called the circle of chords. Seeing each chord planted along the major scale of the key that you're in. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you make it to video 3. Spend as much time on these videos as you need to. Back them up, pause them, come back in a week, come back in 2 weeks. Whatever you have to do, you want to start really understanding things in a more organized way. So that's video 2 for key of A. I'll see you for video 3.